If I were to ask you who you are, what would you tell me? Would you tell me your name? What you do for a living? Or maybe you would tell me something about the foods you like or the hobbies you enjoy. But what does a name say about the person it belongs to? Yet somehow it kinda defines who we are. With every detail, every shred of information that you offer, the people around you will be able to piece together the person you appear to be. It is a strange feeling, this dissonance between who you think you are and who others perceive you to be. We carry within us an idea of who we are, our own identity. It is meticulously crafted from experiences, desires, fears, and also memories. Yet, this you that is in your head is a construct that only you truly know. It is your private narrative, even if only subconsciously. And despite all of these efforts to project this self into the world, the person everybody else sees is going to be someone else entirely. I am silver and exact. I have no preconceptions. Whatever I see, I swallow immediately, just as is, unmisted by love or dislike. I am not cruel, only truthful. The eye of a little god four-cornered. Most of the time, I meditate on the opposite wall. It is pink with speckles. I have looked at it for so long, I think it is part of my heart, but it flickers. Faces and darkness separate us over and over. I am not cruel, only truthful, revealing how it reflects an image of the self that is direct and unforgiving, not shaped by our inner narrative, but by the stark reality of what is seen. In Sylvia Plath's poem The Mirror, much like the perceptions of others, offers an image that may not align with how we feel internally. It shows the external self, the one that others interact with, leaving us to reconcile this reflection with our internal sense of identity. The mirror we look into is only capable of reflecting what it sees. It describes itself as the eye of a little god. And like a god, the mirror sees things exactly as they are. Neither does the mirror have intentions of its own, nor does it have the desire to make us feel bad about ourselves. Now I am a lake. A woman bends over me, searching my reaches for what she really is. Then she turns to those liars, the candles or the moon. I see her back and reflect it faithfully. She rewards me with tears and agitation of hands. I am important to her. She comes and goes. Each morning, it is her face that replaces the darkness. In me, she has drowned a young girl, and in me, an old woman rises toward her day after day like a terrible fish. When we look into the mirror, we experience the mirror's objectivity as a pointed reminder of our own reality. What once were young eyes naively glimpsing into the glassy reflection will eventually grow old and frail, further removed. Mirrors create an image of ourselves that we might not truly recognize or accept. The woman, staring into her cold and objective reflection, witnesses a process that the mirror records without sympathy or distortion. This reflection, though accurate, is incomplete. It only captures the surface, leaving the depth of our inner identity untouched. The mirror reflects the persona, the outer shell we show the world, but not the complexity beneath it. In Jungian psychology, the persona is the mask or the facade we present to the outside world. It is the part of our personality that we show to others. It is shaped by societal expectations, by roles and norms. And the persona is necessary for every social interaction. It helps us navigate the world by conforming to what is expected of us. However, Jung also says that over-identification with the persona, or confusing it with our true self, can lead to a shallow and inauthentic existence. The persona is not our complete identity, but a carefully curated image meant to manage how others perceive us. It is a social construct, one that others interact with, but it is only a fraction of who we really are. The deeper and more authentic aspects of ourselves remain buried deep within our subconscious, hidden behind this mask, only partially glimpsed by others, if at all. If you think about it, every person you meet, interact with, or merely pass by on the street, each and every one of them holds a different version of you in their mind. Their perception is shaped by their own bias and expectations, along with the small fragments you've chosen to reveal, intentionally or not. We curate our own identities differently depending on who we are with. We play roles: friend, colleague, partner, or family member. Each of these roles is built and attached with its own set of expectations and behaviors. For your best friend, you might be the dependable one, the person who's always there, the person who always listens. For a coworker, you might be the quiet one, the person who seems a little too serious. And for a stranger, you're just a fleeting moment, just a face in the crowd. Most likely, you're not leaving an impression at all. Yet, even when we are the most honest, the most ourselves, the other person only sees a partial truth. They see you through the lens of their own subjectivity, meaning their you is never fully in sync with the you in your head. Jung also described the concept of the shadow, which represents the unconscious, the hidden parts of ourselves. Those aspects we repress or deny because they are incompatible with our persona, which what we express on the outside. The shadow contains qualities and desires that we might find uncomfortable or unacceptable, and so we project those onto others or keep them buried within ourselves. The interplay between the persona and the shadow creates internal tension. While the persona is concerned with maintaining a certain image in the eyes of others, the shadow holds the truths about ourselves that we may not wish to acknowledge. Jung believed that personal growth and self-awareness come from integrating the shadow into our conscious life, acknowledging and accepting these hidden aspects of ourselves. People see our persona, but the shadow remains obscured. It often influences our behavior in ways that are not immediately apparent to others, or even to ourselves. Ingmar Bergman's Persona is one of those films I came across quite a number of times. I've watched it on several occasions in film school, on my own, yet despite having watched it numerous times, I would never claim to have understood it entirely. I'm not that pretentious. Summarizing it perfectly, one commenter says, "How this pretentious movie manages to not be pretentious at all is one of the greatest accomplishments of Persona." The film is centered around two women, Elisabeth Vogler, a famous actress who suddenly stopped speaking, and Alma, a nurse assigned to care for her. And as the story unfolds, we learn that both Elisabeth and Alma have their own demons tormenting them. They are both trying to uphold their identities. However, eventually these separate personas begin to blur and morph into each other. This also ties into the singularity of the title itself, Persona. However, Bergman keeps reminding us that this story is not real. Throughout the entire film are sequences that break the illusion and the immersion, and confirm that this is still a film we're watching. For example, about halfway through the film seemingly breaks and rips for a couple of frames, and it appears to catch fire within the projector. We see it melting on the screen, and then blackness. Shortly thereafter, light, and then Persona starts again at the beginning. Near the end of the film cuts from one of the actresses to a shot of the camera crew. Light, camera operator, script crew, and Bergman himself look at us dispassionately. The on-screen camera turns, and in its viewfinder we see what will be the next scene. We have been brutally reminded that the story is being filtered through a lens. Everything we see is not an objective reality, but much rather a subjectively curated montage. By breaking up the viewing experiences and breaking the immersion and relying so heavily on spoken dialogue, Bergman displays that ideas alone are able to create images and thus reality itself. And in return, you might ultimately start to raise questions about the true nature of how we all are able to create our own reality, along with the way we are perceived by others. The film deals with the perplexing theme of duality, as the two protagonists become so entangled that you could ask whether there are really two people we're seeing. That all of what is happening is only an internal dissolution of a single personality, which becomes as valid of a theory as anything else. Bergman implies that our identities are not fixed, but they are fragmented and multifaceted. Elizabeth's silence becomes a form of rebellion against the roles she has been forced to play, both as an actress and as a person, and by extent as a woman. By refusing to speak, she rejects all the external expectations placed upon her, seeking instead to confront a more authentic self, one that is not mediated by others' perceptions. Consider the countless layers of interpretation, misinterpretation, and incomplete knowledge that shape these perceptions. Maybe you told a joke once that fell flat and now someone thinks of you as insensitive. It keeps you up at night. Or perhaps you lent a helping hand when it wasn't expected and suddenly you are seen as kind-hearted. Each interaction subtly alters the version of you that exists in someone else's mind. Jung's process of individuation is the journey towards self-actualization and psychological wholeness. It involves integrating the persona, the shadow, and other elements of the psyche into the self. Through individuation, we come to understand and harmonize these different facets of our personality. Individuation involves recognizing that our identity is multifaceted and that the version of ourselves we present to others is just one part of a more complex whole. It requires confronting the shadow and understanding how the persona shapes and sometimes distorts how we interact with the world. This process leads to a more authentic existence, where we are not merely playing roles or living up to others' expectations, but expressing our true selves. This realization can be both liberating and also unsettling. Liberating because it means that you are not bound to any single identity. The you that exists in someone else's head is their creation as much as it is yours. It is also unsettling though, because it reminds you that you only have little control over how you are seen and understood. It is as if we are all authors, constantly writing our own stories. But these stories are incomplete manuscripts spread across the minds of countless others. None of them fully capture who we are. They're snippets, some accurate, others skewed, stitched together from the little interactions and observations others have of us. Now, I might be asking, who are you? The answer is as fragmented as it is complex. You are a multitude of identities, each one reflecting a different perspective, a different version of you. And yet, none of these is fully you, just as none of them is fully untrue. They are all pieces of a puzzle, bits of colored glass that form an impression, but never the whole picture. In the words of Roger Ebert's comment on persona, most of what we think of as ourselves is not direct experience of the world, but a mental broadcast made of ideas, memories, media input, other people, jobs, roles, duties, lusts, hopes, and fears. And as much as Elizabeth chooses to be who she is, we all have the choice to be who we are. Ultimately, the only person who carries the complete version of your story is you. And even that is subject to change, growth, reinterpretation, or reimagination. You are not static, no one is. We're all dynamic, and just as others see you differently, you also evolve in your own understanding of who you are. This isn't to say that you should despair over the fractured way in which you exist in others' minds. Rather, it is a call to embrace the fluidity of identity, to accept that you are and always will be a work in progress, an ongoing conversation between the you in your head and the many yous that exist in the world. So, I will ask you, who are you? And if you look into the mirror, who's the person you see? Or perhaps the more fitting question is, who will you become? Thank you for watching.